So today we're here to talk to you about your senior year. So this is important to kind of take some time to talk to you about this because it's different from other years. In other years, you're kind of just following along in the curriculum and just going down the list and making sure that you have everything you need. But this time you have some more flexibility, you get to choose more, but you have things you still need to make sure you get done. So we want to make sure that you are planning in advance and that you know what's going on and that you are prepared going into this, because once you get into it, it may be too late to make changes if you forget something. So today, myself, Christy Stewart, and Eric Hinkle will be talking to you about that. Let me go to my next slide. Here we go. All right. So if you, let me see, here it is. So if you go back to the materials that I believe were sent to you for this, I wanted to put this in the chat, but I'm not really sure how to navigate out of the shared window right now without messing things up. So Eric, if you wanted to put that planning sheet in the chat, that would be helpful too for the students to refer to. But you should have gotten that before. So if you want to go ahead and open the planning sheet so you can follow along as we're talking here. So basically the planning sheet just gives you a lot of information again about senior year and also lists out the MechE electives, which we'll be talking more about in a little bit. But first in general, so what do you need to know just to graduate? So you must earn 126 degree applicable credit hours. You might look at your degree audit and see like, oh, I've got 130, I'm good to go. Not necessarily, because those credits might be just other random things. Like maybe if you have a minor or you started in another major or you took some other random classes, those don't count towards your degree. They do have to be degree applicable. So if you want to also go ahead and open up your degree audit, you can start checking those things. Your degree audit is located in Catalyst, and then My Academics, Academic Progress, and then degree audit. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at that before now and you know where it is, but just in case, that is where it is. And then that tracks your progress throughout your degree. It shows you what you have done and what you don't have done. And then you can find this information here and there. So your degree applicable credit hours are listed towards the bottom. If you scroll down after your last semester of senior year, you should start to see the hours listed there. And there's going to be two. I think there's like a total credit hours, and then there's again degree applicable. So that's the one that you need to be looking at. And then you need to earn at least a 2.0 UC GPA. So that's the minimum cutoff for your classes overall. And you also need a 2.0 major GPA. I believe that UC GPA is located at the top of the audit, and your degree, your major GPA is located towards the bottom. So they're in different places. You also need to have earned your co-op credit for each term that was available to you through this coming summer. So if you came in as a freshman and you stayed on track, you should have 5. But if you came in like as a transfer student or a transition student, whatever co-ops were available to you at the point you entered the major, that's how many you need to have. If you have questions about your co-op specifics, you should check with your co-op advisor about that and they can check on that. And then you should also meet all of your elective requirements. And we'll talk a little bit more about what the electives mean in a minute. So before we get there, we're going to talk about the senior year schedule, so what it looks like. This is also available in the major map for your cohort, so 2022, you can look at that, but it's here. You can notice a lot of spaces where, again, as I mentioned before, you have some flexibility to choose some things, but that also means you can't forget about some of them either, because then you won't graduate. So you have to be really careful about keeping track of all those different classes that you can choose from. So both are, depends on what you do for senior design, but 15 to 16 credit hours for each semester. So senior design 1 is required for fall semester. The credit hours differ depending on which one you choose. And then you have to take Finance 4091, and then there's 3 spots for other courses. Doesn't mean that you don't have to do anything, but you do have to fill them with something. And you can see at the bottom, those classes in red are the classes that you can fill in to those course spots. And then spring semester, very similar, you've got senior design 2, and then the rest of it is courses that you can select. So the classes that you need to select from are MechE 5072C. A lot of students like to take this in the fall, But if it gets full, which will happen, then you can push it to spring. Or maybe there's a class that you really want to take that's only offered in fall and you don't have room for the MEC class, you can push it to spring. Then you also need to have 2 MEC electives. So we'll talk a little bit more about what those are in a few minutes, but that's where you would put them either in the fall, in the spring. You can do 2 at once. You can split them up 1 and 1, depends on you. And then you have a guided elective. So this is something that's outside of engineering that helps to expand your ability as a professional in engineering. And then you have 3 breadth of knowledge classes that you need to take as well. Some of you might be done with these. You can check that in your degree audit. So again, after your senior year, that's where your electives are. So you can start looking at your electives to see what you have left. Some of you might have all of them, some have none, then you'll have more spaces there. Sometimes students are concerned if they are a little bit ahead in their electives and they have empty spots in their schedule. So they might feel concerned about maybe potentially dropping below full time. That's okay for your senior year. It happens sometimes, it's not uncommon. However, you will want to check with One Stop to make sure that it's okay with everything else. So as far as we go with advising in the college, it's fine, but you want to check with like your scholarships or financial aid, things like that. Or maybe you're an international student, you have some requirements, or you're an athlete, these kind of things could prevent you from dropping below full time. So if that's the case for you, just check with One Stop and then consider adding another just random class of interest just to bring yourself back to full time. All right, so that's the schedule. Next, a little bit more about the degree audit. So again, that's located in Catalyst, My Academics, Academic Progress, and then degree audit. Again, that lists out all your requirements for every semester that you're here at UC. As you go along, the arrows will be open when they're empty, and then when you fill it in with a class, it will close, and there's a class inside. So at this point, you want to be looking at your audit and seeing a lot of closed classes, a lot of closed arrows. If you're curious as to what class is in there, you can click on the arrow and it will open and show you the class that's inside. So it's a good idea to start looking at that now, like maybe like in the summer, even this semester too, it's fine to look at that, go through it, make sure everything's okay. If there's something weird that you have a question about, then you can certainly follow up with your advisor just to ask to make sure like everything's good or what about this? I have a question about that. And then we can look at it with you as well. So it's a really good idea just to make sure you're taking that personal responsibility to make sure you get your degree. We do check everybody, but sometimes things happen. So it's always good just to follow up and check behind us as well. That's what it looks like. So as I mentioned, the arrows, a lot of your arrows should be closed at this point. That means satisfied. Okay, so going into the electives. So as I mentioned, you have a handful of electives to take in your senior year. So we mentioned that there are 3 breadth of knowledge classes that you should take. ME majors have 4 total, and you should have taken one already, at least one. But you can see these are the 2 categories that you have for your BOK. So the first one, contemporary topics. The other category is general education. You have to take 2 classes in each category. Within those 2 categories, there's some other categories you can choose from. So for contemporary topics, you have to take 2 classes for 6 credit hours total. You get to choose classes from any of those 2 categories. So DC, DEI, those are the same thing. They're not 2 separate categories. DC and DEI, the reason why there's 2 listed there is because the university is changing the label for those. Right now, there's still DC classes on the books, so you'll still see them listed and you can find them, so you can still take them, but they're moving toward DEI. So right now, at this point, you can take either one, it's fine, but they count for the one category. And then the other category is SE or SCE. So again, the university is moving from SE over to SCE. So let's say maybe you look for SE and you think, I don't really see much, then try SCE and see if you get more results that way. So again, you have to take a DC or DEI, one from there, and then another one from SE or SCE. And the other category is general education. So again, you have to take 2 classes, 6 credit hours each, and you can choose classes from 2 different categories. This time you've got 4 listed there: social science, historical perspectives, humanities, fine arts. So you can choose 2 from there. You cannot choose 2 of the same. So that's happened a few times. some panicked seniors realize when I ask them, like, can you drop this? And they don't want to, and like, hey, you can't take two social sciences, it doesn't count. So just make sure that you're planning very well with that, checking those BOK categories to make sure they're two separate categories. And so in your senior year, if you're on track with the standard curriculum, you'll have 3 of these left. It could be any one of them. So if you have questions about your BOKs, you can always follow up with one of us too. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see what the degree audit looks like for your BOKs. That's what it looks like if they're all satisfied. So again, you have the big categories, contemporary topics, general education, and then the 2 classes within those categories, and those are satisfied in this example. All right, so I believe next, Eric is going to talk to us about MechE electives.
Hi, thanks, Christy. Good afternoon, everybody. So the next component of curriculum we want to cover is kind of MechE electives, which are basically departmental electives for mechanical engineering. So basically, these serve as an opportunity for you to explore different areas related to mechanical engineering that aren't inherently in the required curriculum, but touch on related topics, or they might perhaps go more in depth into a particular area of mechanical engineering that was covered, but just expands on it and goes more in depth and more detail regarding a particular topic. So these are really areas that are going to be contingent upon your interest. So if you have a particular interest in certain types of programming or certain types of material science or various other fields, this is this opportunity for you to get some more knowledge base and exposure to that particular area related to the field. Now, these courses are all going to be courses that are up to the 5,000 level. Okay, usually 4,000, 5,000, sometimes some 3,000 level courses. We'll go over the list of them later. But generally speaking, these are going to be upper level courses. But keep in mind that if you're seeing something listed as 6,000, these particular courses, generally speaking, are for graduate students and can only be applied as graduate credit. Now, something else to keep in mind, though, is that sometimes you'll see courses that are cross-listed. In other words, it'll be the same course with the same subject, but one course number is in the 5,000s, say, and one is in the 6,000s. That is because some courses teach both undergraduate and graduate students. The important thing to keep in mind is that you need to, as an undergraduate student, need to make sure that you are registered for the 5,000 level section, not in a 6,000 level section, because the 6,000 are for the grad students and can only be applied to a graduate program. 5,000 and under are undergraduate classes that are applied to an undergraduate program. So while there might be some that are cross-listed with the grad class, you as an undergraduate student need to make sure that you are in the undergraduate section of that particular class. Here's a kind of list of some examples of courses offered as elective. And we've kind of broken them down in terms of courses that are typically offered in the fall versus typically offered in the spring. Now, Christy kind of alluded to this earlier, and I'll reiterate that if there's a particular elective that's offered in the fall that you really, really want to take, you want to make sure that you register for that for the fall, because it might not be offered in the spring. And you can rearrange your BOKs or even 5072C later on because you know that they're going to be offered that semester in the spring. So in short, yes, there are the design classes that you have to take and the finance class that you have to take in those particular semesters, but everything else is movable. Therefore, you want to prioritize taking courses that are only offered in that particular semester. So for instance, if there's a MechE elective that's only offered in the fall, or typically only offered in the fall, you want to make sure to get into that particular class, and you can maybe do the BOK next semester because you're content with 5 or 6 different options that are offered each semester, and you're confident it'll fit into a schedule. Whereas if there's a course in the spring, you might want to save a slot for an elective in the spring because you know that's a course that you particularly want to take. So just plan strategically based on the general offerings of when electives are going to be available. Now, the guided elective is a little bit different, where the MechE electives are pretty specific in terms of being engineering-related courses that have some semblance in connection to mechanical engineering. The guided elective is an opportunity to have a more broad possibilities in terms of filling this requirement. Now, keep in mind that you can do any kind of mech elective can also be utilized in the guided elective. So in essence, you could do 3 electives instead of 2 mech electives in the guided elective. So any mech elective can also fill this guided elective requirement. However, there are some possibilities of courses that aren't mech electives that could fill this particular requirement. So if you want to get some exposure to areas related to writing skills or ethics or communication, those kind of, business communication or public speaking, various different ethic courses, some writing courses that can be used, kind of soft skills that could fall into this category. There are also several business classes that could fall into this. So if you were wanting to pursue a business minor, for instance, maybe some introductory business course could be utilized here. There are also some welding courses where students were just really interested in exploring welding and engaging in that, and that could be used here. Also, kind of higher level math and science courses. So for instance, students who might want to do a physics minor could look at many of those physics minor courses being applicable to overlap with this guided elective, as well as some other areas related to upper level science, but physics is the most common that we see. Also math minors, some upper level math courses towards that minor could also apply to a guided elective. So like we've kind of touched, Christy and I have both touched on this, but it's worth reiterating. Be proactive in planning out these last couple semesters, because there are implications in terms of which elective courses you might be able to do based on when they are offered. So if you know there's an elective that you want that's offered in the fall, plan accordingly to slot that in for your fall, and then be making different arrangements for your BOKs in the spring, depending upon what might fit into a schedule. Register as soon as your window opens. Take advantage of your earlier registration as a senior. Because again, the longer that you wait, the more seniors will have enrolled already and picked up the seats in those classes, and the fewer options you're going to have available to you. So take advantage of your early registration to get into the classes that you particularly want. And again, something worth reiterating. The finance course needs to be taken in the fall. The design courses, design 1s in the fall, designs 2s in the spring. That's just the way that the curriculum's set up. And certain electives are only going to be offered either in the fall or the spring, and you want to plan accordingly. So keep that in mind, even with these elective classes. Just because you can take your elective in one semester or the other, certain particular electives you might really want to take will likely only be offered one or the other semester, and then just plan accordingly.
I also just wanted to add too, some electives listed, they count, but they aren't always offered every year. It just depends on staffing and availability and a lot of other factors. So you might see a class you really want to take in the fall, but then it's just not being offered. So keep that in mind, have some backup options in place. That's super important. You can also look at soon, and like on Monday, you'll be able to see what's available for fall, so that won't really be an issue soon. But for spring, how are you going to know? You can look at the spring schedule of classes now. For this current spring, you can look and see what's being offered now. That can give you an idea of what might be offered next spring. It's not necessarily guaranteed, but it will still give you some information to go off of. So have backup options.
Thank you, Christy. That's definitely something we want to reiterate, is that not every course is offered every year, because again, it's going to depend on the faculty and what they're teaching and how their schedule works out, etc. So you can get a good historical basis based on what's traditionally been offered in the fall and the spring, particularly looking at this spring, and you'll know what's in the fall already, obviously, but looking at this spring will give you an idea of next spring. But don't assume that those electives are going to be offered. Have a couple other options in place, and there could also be conflicts in terms of scheduling. There might be 2 electives that you really want to take that semester, but they might conflict in terms of their time. So always have backup options, whether that's BOK courses or whether that's elective classes. So senior design here. You have a few different options for senior design. The most important thing to keep in mind is that you're not mixing and matching these. They go together. So if you're going to do the standard design class 5051, you're going to do standard design 2 5052. Okay, same with automotive. If you do the first one as automotive, you're going to do the second one as automotive. And of course, the same for the HVAC design course. Really, they all count the same in terms of the requirement. It's really just a question of preference and what you want to get from the experience. Another quick thing to note is that automotive design is going to be that extra credit hour, like Christy was talking earlier. It depends, your credit hours is going to depend on your design class because everything else is pretty uniform. Automotive is going to be an extra credit hours, 4 credit hours, where the other 2 are going to be 3. So that's where that extra credit hour could come into place. For most people, it's not going to affect your ability to take it. It's just something you need to keep in mind, that there's an extra credit hour associated with automotive. And again, your choice is really just going to be based upon what kind of field that you're interested in. So if you really want to work in the automotive industry, the automotive design course would be a great opportunity to get some practical experience in that particular field. Same with HVAC. So if you really want to work in the HVAC systems, and that's just something that you're in, then that would be a great opportunity to get an experience specific to that area. And standard design is of course going to cover a lot of different areas. Perhaps if you're not quite certain, or if it doesn't fit into those 2 categories, then standard design would probably be the best option given your situation. But again, those are going to vary depending upon student interest and what you want to get from the experience. Okay, so minors and ascend. Okay, let's start with the minors first. Keep in mind that having credit for a minor is not a simple matter of just completing the courses. You need to actually make sure that that's on your academic program. You need to actually apply for the minor and have it applied to your academic program so that you can get credit for it if you've completed the requirements. So if it is not appearing on your degree audit and your academic plan, make sure to get in contact with the advisor for that particular minor so that they can get it applied to your degree program and that you can actually get recognized for completing that minor. Again, reach out to us. We can direct you to the appropriate person if you need assistance with that. Also, minors have to be done concurrently with your undergraduate degree. In other words, you can't complete your undergraduate degree requirements, get your diploma, and then take courses to complete a minor and get awarded a minor. The minor has to be completed at the point in which you're graduating. Okay, it can't be done afterwards. So that's something important to keep in mind in regards to that. Ascend. Okay, if you're interested in taking Ascend coursework, particularly those last couple semesters, because that's kind of what's left, make sure that you have actually applied to the graduate program. Okay, Ascend is the best way of looking at it is Ascend is a mechanism by which you can be accepted into a graduate program while you're an undergraduate. Okay, and be able to take them concurrently with undergraduate and pay only undergraduate tuition, et cetera. But you still have to apply to the actual graduate program and be accepted for you to be able to take those graduate courses through Ascend. If you have questions about the process, there's contact information for the graduate advisors for whatever program you are interested in. Make sure to reference that information. But the biggest thing is you have to actually apply to that graduate program and be accepted for you to then be taking these graduate courses if you so intend through Ascend in these last 2 semesters. And again, keep in mind that you may complete part of your graduate degree during your undergraduate, okay? But obviously after you've been awarded your undergraduate degree, you can continue on to finish your graduate degree afterwards, okay? So unlike the minor, which has to be done during your undergraduate, you can obviously finish your graduate degree after you've been awarded your graduate. Ascend may allow you to get a significant portion of it done early so that it minimizes what you have left to do after your undergraduate, but you can certainly finish your graduate degree after you're doing the Ascend coursework during your undergraduate. Here are contact information, obviously, for the advisors with the alphanumerical breakdown, and there's all our emails there. So if you have any additional questions, please be proactive and reach out to your academic advisor assigned to you, and we can help you, guide you through any of this. Excuse me. And keep in mind, through WebEx, we do have our drop-in hours, Tuesdays, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So please take advantage of those too, particularly if you have quick questions or just want to sit down and chat with us and resolve something. We do have drop-in hours. We've changed them for the semester, Tuesdays 11 to 1.
All right, are there any questions from folks? I did post in the chat that that fall registration begins on March 8th. Just so you know, it might be best to put a reminder on your calendars, or when you receive an email when your registration window opens. John has a question about the welding class. John, you could unmute or just go ahead and type it in the chat.
Looks
Well,
like we
John
have a
is
separate.
Yeah, while John is putting his question together, Gabe is wondering if we know who the faculty are for the senior design courses. I know that
yeah, go
for
ahead.
2051 and 2052, it is Dr. Tom Houston. For the automotive one, that is Professor Michael Maines.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure about the others.
Dr. Frame usually teaches one. Ellen Arthur has taught one before, but I might be thinking of METs too. I know Dr. Janet Dong also teaches senior design, but she might be MET. So,
Yeah, I think they're.
but you can start to view. You can view the classes and instructors on Monday. So your shopping cart's open on Monday, so you can look at that in a couple days.
Christy, the question John has is revolving around, is there an equivalent to the welding class that transfers to UC? Are you aware of that? Because I don't, that's more of an MET. So I'm not as familiar with
that's
that.
something you might, if you have something specific in mind, you can email your advisor and we'll just take it to the department to check on. That's something that the department will usually review.
And something they might want to have, I mean, it's going to depend upon how much information they have. A course description might be sufficient. They might want additional information about it. So we might be getting back to you asking or trying to get some information from the institution about what the class actually entails. It's just going to depend on the nature of the course.
I think it also depends to where you're taking it from. Because like
Okay.
if you're taking it from Sinclair, there may be some reciprocity agreements that are different as opposed to like Cincinnati State or even Columbus State. Okay.
Right. Right.
Other questions? Okay. Well, if there are specific questions as it relates to advising, reach out to your academic advisors, and they are listed on the screen here. But Joe, let's see, Jacob asked,
we did skip Jacob's.
would you be able to take minor courses over the summer so that they could get classes done in time for graduation? So would there be any minor courses available for Jacob?
It depends on the minor. Some of them do, some don't. So you'll just have to check on, I think summer classes are already out. So you can just go on Catalyst now and look.
Just keep in mind petitioning to take course during co-op if that's what you're doing, and right, make sure that it's not going to interfere with your co-op responsibility, all that kind of standard thing. But yeah, it is really, it starts with work with your advisor about what you actually have to get done during the summer. Like there might be some minor courses that could overlap with the guided elective. So make sure you're actually fully aware of what you actually need to do during the summer in terms of the number of classes or what classes, and plan kind of strategically about that. And then figure out what is actually available over the summer through UC. So the summer schedule will be available. You can look and see what the options might be. And I mean, if that is not available, then you can maybe look to something that might be able to transfer over the summer, and we can kind of get to that point after that. But it's about being strategic and understanding what you can do over the summer that you can't get done during the last 2 semesters. Oh, thanks, Rich. The summer semester date,
Yeah.
very close. So keep that in mind, a couple weeks away.
And then when it comes, you mentioned summer classes over the summer. So for these folks, if they choose to do a summer class, are we still at the 6 credit limit?
For
When
a
it comes-
class and co-op,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, as far as I know.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that hasn't changed.
Okay. So, if folks keep that in mind, if you are considering classes during your final co-op semester, it's up to 6 credit hours. There is an approval process, and you would have to go through the college form process. Once your academic advisor signs off on it, it actually comes to me, not as your co-op advisor, but as the director for manufacturing and construction co-op programs. I approve it, and then it goes from there. Okay. Other questions for our folks? Okay. Well, if something comes to mind after class today, you go ahead and reach out via email or make an appointment with your academic advisor to discuss those plans as you go into the summer and also the fall semester. And so with that, thank you, Christy and Eric, for coming out today and sharing this information with us.